Welcome to One Tired Teacher, episode 218, Setting Up Your Makerspace. So we got another rerun for you for the month of July. We are focusing on Makerspace and how to get a Makerspace up and running in your classroom before it is time to go back to school. So it's getting a little bit closer to August, but you're still in July. So hopefully you're not feeling stressed out. You're going at your own pace. Something that I learned recently that I thought was really powerful. So I sometimes have the tendency to compare school systems to like oppressive situations because I feel like our needs and our desires are not always taken into consideration. Our thoughts are not always valued. We're undermined at times, and that gets frustrating. When we're at a school where the leader is empowering and encouraging and supportive, it makes all the difference. And one of the things that I recently was reading was a book. It was talking about oppression, and it was talking about environments where you feel like you can't do things. You have to all do it exactly the same way, but that there was actually some power in going above and beyond. You can't fight the things that you have to do as far as like you are mandated to do this, and this. Like you know that you have to do that. You're like, okay, I have to do that, but they can't stop me from going above and beyond. I have to show up on time, but they can't tell me I can't come early. And so that's just another way of taking back your power. Now, I realized for me, like when I first heard this, I'm like, that doesn't make sense. I think you give less, you don't give more. And that's how I felt. I felt kind of angry at first, but then I started thinking about it. And I started thinking about all the summers, all the hours that I spent in my classroom when I didn't have to. And I didn't do it because I wanted any kind of recognition from anyone. I didn't do it even necessarily to make it better for the students. Sometimes I did it because it was like a safe space for me, and it made me feel more ready to go. And it made me, get excited to see that the kids were excited when they came in, and the enthusiasm that they had based on what I had put together felt worth it. And it felt like I'm going at my own pace. I'm doing it on my own terms, and it felt good. And so I don't want to take that away from teachers. I want teachers to feel that way as well. That's what I think about Makerspace. They can tell you have to do the basics and the fundamentals, but you can do it in a different way. You can do it in a better way. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We are doing a walk back down memory lane. This was episode 32. These episodes were so long ago. So, I thought it would be fun to do a rerun. Hope you stick around.
Welcome to One Tired Teacher. And even though she may need a nap, this teacher is ready to wake up and speak her truth about the trials and treasures of teaching. Here she is, wide awake. Wait, she's not asleep right now, is she? She is awake, right? Okay. From Trina Debery Teaching and Learning, your host, Trina Debery.
Hey, so like I said, we're going to talk about episode 32, and which was when we were talking about, we were getting our maker spaces up and running in your learning spaces, and we were going to discuss stored ideas, labels and signs, procedures to have in place, and student expectations, and in an all around in a makerspace. This was the conclusion, long ago when episode 32 came out. This was the conclusion of a series I did on Makerspace. And I kind of get down into the nitty gritty. And also I mention a Makerspace startup kit and in this episode, and you're going to hear it again, but I'm giving that away for free. It is for sale in my shop, and it is a bundle with the procedures and jobs or whatever, but it's also a freebie that I'm going to give away. So you can download it today for free. And that is at trinadeberyteachingandlearning.com / let me make sure, MS Startup Kit. So MSSTARTUPKIT, all one word, MS Startup Kit, all one word, no hyphen in the startup, and that will get you the Makerspace Startup Kit. I also have the link in the show notes, and let's get on with the rerun. Hey there! I'm so excited to talk about Makerspace, and I've been talking about it for the last few weeks, and today is the conclusion of the mini-series. But if you want a deeper dive into what we've been discussing and you want a chance to win a free Makerspace moment in literature, then visit me on Facebook, on my Facebook page, Trina Debery Teaching and Learning, for Makerspace Mondays. This is live each Monday on my Facebook page from 12 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We talk all things Makerspace. I'm going to be doing this throughout the summer, so the Makerspace conversation doesn't have to end. It's just we're ready to move on One Tired Teacher. I hope I see you on Facebook on my page at Trina Debery Teaching and Learning. Before we get to the nuts and bolts of Makerspace, I want to take this moment to make sure that all teacherpreneurs, teachers who have started their own business, know about my new podcast, Teacherpreneurs Raise Your Hand. That podcast is geared toward all things business for teachers. This past week, I had a special guest, Casey Morris from the Go Getters podcast. Casey is talking all about podcasting, and she is currently accepting new students for her course, Transform Your Resources. So go check out that episode from episode 5 from Teacherpreneurs Raise Your Hand. All right, so let's get to One Tired Teacher. I do want to do a shout out to one of my listeners from she left a rating and a comment on Apple Podcast, which I really appreciate. Dawn says, I first listened because I'm a podcast junkie, and I stumbled upon One Tired Teacher. The title and intro caught my attention. As a former classroom teacher turned fitness teacher, I soon realized that there was a lot for me here. Paraphrasing a past guest and host, I left the classroom. I didn't leave education. Once you're a teacher, it becomes part of your soul. So great podcast for anyone in any education setting, teachers of kids in any form, and those interested in the inner process that go into these environments. Thank you, Dawn. Thank you so much for that sweet review and for reminding us all that I know that I have said those words, so it feels funny to read my own words like that, but I know that it's just reminding us all that once you're a teacher, you're always a teacher. You're a teacher of all kinds of things. It doesn't have to be inside a school setting anymore. It can be in so many different avenues. And so thank you for that reminder. And I appreciate you taking the time to leave that comment. It really means a lot. So let's go ahead and get started. So as you know, we have been discussing Makerspace. And Makerspace is a place where students can gather, create, invent, tinker, explore, and discover using a variety of tools and materials. In a nutshell, it is an astonishing place to think and learn. And if you haven't decided that Makerspace is the high engagement area you need in your classroom, let's talk about how you can set that up. If you have decided, not if you haven't, if you have decided. If you haven't decided, then you need to go back and listen to episode 30. But if you have decided that this is the thing for you, that you want to spend a little bit of time working on this, then I want to help you figure out some things that you need to have in place, because it can be overwhelming. I'm not going to lie. It can be overwhelming to start any new area in your classroom, and what you're going to do with, how are you going to set it up? What are you going to do with your expectations? Because you always have to have expectations, because when we have great expectations, that's when things really work well for us. And that's when it's run smoothly and things can get put away and it's actually manageable. So I think that's why summer can be such a great time to think about this, because we're not in the hustle bustle of everyday life in the classroom. And when that's going on, it's hard to think about anything else. And putting something new on our plate sometimes can be the thing that rejuvenates us and excites us and wakes us up, takes that tired out of teaching and it wakes us up. And I think that sometimes we need that. Other times we need the rest. We completely need the rest, and putting something new on our plate is not where we are at that time in our career. And that's okay. So it's really okay if you decide this is not for me. It's too much. But I'm telling you, if you decide it is for you, it really can be a transformative addition to your classroom. So let's talk about organization. So the one thing to keep in mind when putting your space together is to do what is needed for you and your kids. Now, everybody's situation is different. So you certainly want to keep this in mind, and even involved, and you even want to keep the kids involved in this when you are choosing exactly where you want to place things, and sometimes it's nice to have the kids' input as well. But if you're thinking about it over the summer, then you're not going to have the kids to talk to about this. You're going to just have to think about what you know about them and what you've seen through your experience and how they move and interact and think and how they currently put things away in your classroom. So choosing materials is very personal, and only you can know if your space will be just right for things like power tools, which if you're in an elementary school, that might not be a thing that you add. I really think power tools can be pretty cool and amazing, but can be dangerous. And so we have to take those kinds of things in consideration. You've got to keep your kids in mind. If you have middle school, high school kids, then only you know if this will work for you. But tech tools and even arts and crafts tools, you've got to know your students, and you've got to have the ability to determine if it will be something that you can create a routine procedure for, and if it's going to work. Also, the objective of your space is a really important factor. Actually, it is the key factor. Do you want your students to be more creative? Do you want them to have a hands-on experience? Do you want them to incorporate science, technology, engineering, and math, like STEM skills? Do you want to extend literature responses with Makerspace moments in literature? Or do you want to allow free exploration and building? Is this a good place for collaboration? Will it be a center? Is it a closet in your house? And not in your house. Well, could be in your house if you're doing homeschool, but in your learning space, or a closet in your classroom, even a cabinet in your classroom. Not every classroom has closets, unfortunately. I think all classrooms should have closets, but that's a whole nother topic. So if you answered yes to any of these questions, then I want you to keep these factors in mind as you begin. You're going to want to keep those things very clear so that you don't lose your way. So sometimes all we need is a little help getting started. And after you've determined your objectives, then it is important to decide where you're going to put things. So one of the most important aspects of creating a space is knowing how everything is going to be put away. Well, and at least for me, that's the most important thing, because I don't want to spend a massive amount of time. I don't want to spend any time cleaning up a giant mess that I have to deal with. There's nothing more that irritates me than that. So being creative with your storage containers is definitely the key. You want to have good labels and systems in place, because you definitely want the kids to know how to put things away themselves. And they should be able to do that. That's an expectation that we should all have on all children, no matter what age they are. They should be able to put things away. So some suggestions for storage are like baskets, crates, any other types of containers that you can find from the dollar store, because you want to make this as cheap as possible. We don't want it to be a crazy expense. In fact, if you're thinking, how am I going to afford this? I really think a great idea is to do like a donor's choose, or even asking the community. Certainly putting some things on your supply list for parents can be helpful as well. In your getting to know you and packet, obviously you're asking for supplies for your classroom. Maybe you want to put these on like a wish list, or they're at your open house and you're like, I have a wish list to create a makerspace, and you can give them a little bit of research for why a makerspace is so impactful. And then you ask for some of these supplies. That can be a great way to get things too. But old paint cans can make great containers for tools. They have to be really cleaned out. So that's a lot of work to clean out a paint can. But I do think that they're a good durable solution. And if you have them sitting around, then you can do put a little bit of elbow grease into them, and they make great containers. Recycled dresser. Think of like dumpster diving as a means to getting some things. I mean, there's people that put furniture on the curb. Can be like somebody's old dresser can be a great place to store your makerspace items, and doesn't have to be a gigantic chest of drawers. It can be, I always feel funny saying that. It can be a regular, or it can be a bookcase. It can be something that they no longer need. And maybe you paint it or you chalk paint it so that it can be like part of the makerspace, because maybe they want to design the invention or design it on on the side of the dresser with the chalk paint, and then they create it from there. Like, I think that would be so cool. There are some really cool furniture pieces for tools as well. If you are in a media center, then you definitely have some furniture funds, and not always, but a lot of times there's some furniture funds. But this specifically is for the classroom, because if you're in the media center, coming up with some of these like solution or storage or solutions, it's not, I wouldn't say easier, but you at least have a budget in the media center, as opposed to a classroom teacher that often has like maybe $100 to spend in their classroom. And that's a huge difference. All right. So another thing that is really important is to have labels and signage. So, because you're going to want to make sure, like I said, that this is very easy for kids to put away. So labels and signs make it so much easier for kids to know where to put things. And let's face it, we want kids to know how to clean up. I do have a Makerspace startup kit in my store. It has labels, signs, posters, standards, and more. And I will link to it in the show notes because it's a really helpful kit that will just get you up and started. So while starting a Makerspace in your classroom, or in your media center, or in your homeschool area, it can be an overwhelming task. So let's be honest. I want you to breathe a little bit more comfortably, knowing that the maker community encourages you to approach making in your own way. So it doesn't have to be like everybody else. And it doesn't have to be like a super elaborate thing either. I've said this before, and I'll say it again because I think it's so crucial. It literally can be in a container. It can be in a crate. You might have a crate or 2 crates with some different tubs in there that have various materials like cardboard or popsicle sticks, Q-tips, toothpicks, things like that you keep in crates that you pull out for a makerspace activity, or that you make your own makeshift makerspace activity on the go. That is completely fine as well. And the makerspace community, they encourage creativity, taking risks, and learning from failure. So by trying different things, you can narrow down what works for you and your kids and what does not. Because if it doesn't work for you, then you take it out. You don't use that part of it. Through this process of exploration and experimentation, you'll be better able to refine your makerspace from a multitude of perspectives until it has become the successful, innovative experience it is meant to be. I found this quote to be really helpful when I was planning my makerspace, and it's actually by the Smith system. Nobody who uses the space needs to be an expert, not even the teacher. I'm going to read that part again. Nobody who uses the space needs to be an expert, not even the teacher. The most important thing is to have a passion for and a curiosity about making in many different forms. Once you establish safety and basic competency, members can teach themselves what they need to know. We find that projects that a member is passionate about are one of the best motivators for learning. I think that's so good. I love that. So you don't have to be an expert. That's the beauty. You don't have to be the expert. You're actually learning alongside the kids. That is what makes it so powerful. So another essential aspect of launching a makerspace is in your space is having clear expectations and procedures for how things are going to be organized and how they're going to be utilized. And when we set up our area, we create systems to help things run smoothly in the same way that we run our classroom, in the same way that we run our learning spaces. It is crucial to creating makerspace procedures that helps make makers understand how to utilize and participate in our spaces. So first of all, number 1, why teach procedures? Well, first, like classroom routines, they train our students to carry out procedures with a minimum of wasted time. And less wasted time allows for more time to create and discover. And one of my very favorite teaching books is by Fred Jones. It's called Tools for Teaching. It is a absolute must read for every single teacher, not even just beginning teachers. I actually read this later on in my career, and it changed my approach to behavior management, classroom management. It changed it. Even in like I don't remember, it was like year 6 maybe that I found this book. It's incredible. It's such a good book. It has and the way it's written, it's a very easy read, and it's Outstanding. All right. So Fred Jones says, by doing chores or tasks, children learn to take pride in helping out around their space. The rule of procedures is never do anything for kids that they are thoroughly capable of doing for themselves. I think that's a really good quote. And I honestly sometimes need to read that to myself on a daily basis, even with my own children. I feel like I have not taught them as good of a job of, and that's not true, because I have one that's really cleans up after herself, is very helpful around the house, puts away the dishes, things like that. And then I have another one who literally leaves his towels on the floor and pees on the seat and trash in his room. And so I need to like tattoo this, even though that's not my thing, on my forehead, and remind myself that I should not be doing things for him that he is thoroughly capable of doing himself. So I need that myself. So I, for some reason, remember that really well in my classroom with all my kids, like all my students, but I don't remember that with my own like children that I gave birth to. So I really need to work on that one. All right. So number 2, explicitly teach and practice each practical procedure. Procedures that are taught and practiced over and over again are the ones that work the best. If you see something that you don't like, they're doing it in a way that doesn't make you happy, it's not going exactly the way you planned, you want to stop the group and you want to reteach them. Especially in the beginning, it's very important. Even later on, like after Christmas or later on in times of the year when they need to be reminded, or even if it's any time. Nope, we're going to stop. We didn't learn this the first time. Let's redo it again. And we're going to figure out how to do it exactly the way that we want it to be done. And so you want your procedures to be seamless. So, and if they're not, you're going to show them how the procedure should look. Or better yet, you're going to allow other kids to show them how to, or teach them. I love that. I used to say, like so-and-so does such a great job, putting away the materials from the Makerspace, or, walking in line or whatever it was. I'm like, so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, can you show us what that looks like? I didn't usually just pick on one person. I usually let them do it in a group. And if at all, and I also knew my kids, if it at all embarrassed them or made them feel like they were standing out, and I wouldn't put them in that situation, because I really don't think it's okay to have kids feel like they're being called out for something and like embarrassed. So anyway, but it is really helpful when you can get some volunteers and people that are good at it to show everybody else how to do it. And sometimes, you know what, it's even good if the people aren't really that good at it, but they do a really good job in front of others. So if they want to be the one that does practice it, sometimes we're like, yes, that's great, because now PD is going to be the expert at how we do this. And then PD all of a sudden feels like, yeah, I can do this. I'm the expert. So that's another tip. But you want to make the teaching of procedures fun. I like to show them how I want it to look, and then I give them a horrible non-example that is so exaggerated that my kids can't help but laugh. And then I repeat the correct way before I have the kids practice it. So I show them what I don't want as well, but I don't leave them with that as they're lasting in their mind. It's kind of like a sandwich. Like, here's what's the right way to do it. Here's a ridiculously wrong way of doing it. And here's what's right. And here's a right way to do it again. So that is the first and last thing in their mind is the right way. So each routine must be taught with care, like any other lesson. And it's very time consuming at the beginning, but it is vitally important to your sanity and an actual time saver in the end. All right. So also, it's important to be proactive. Think through all the areas of your makerspace. You are going to want to anticipate any trouble areas that might develop and that you need to have a procedure for. So it's vital to kind of think through it, how it would actually run and how you want it to look, like where you want things to be placed, how you want kids to get to the makerspace, how many kids do you want in the space, things like that. Think those things through. How are they going to use specific kinds of tools?
So teaching routines and procedures in your space is the most important thing that you're going to do in this area. And again, if you need more information or kind of even thinking through procedures and routines, you really have to check out Tools for Teaching by Fred Jones. There's also The First Days of School by Harry and Rosemary Wong. But I think, I feel like that's a really good book for when you're first starting teaching. But I feel like Tools for Teaching can be picked up at any point in your career. And it's an easy read. You'll look through it and you'll go, okay, I'm doing that. And then you might say, oh, well, that's a good way of looking at it. So I really just think it's just a very valuable resource. Okay, so some procedures that I think that you're going to want to think through in advance. The first thing is definitely safety. That is vital. Like, what kinds of safety precautions are you going to have in place? Like, what do the kids need to be safe? Do they need goggles, gloves, hard hats? Do they need to be trained on a specific tool before they use it? Do you want to just have one person use it that you've trained really well? I mean, that's like maybe the low heat hot glue gun. Like, those are kinds of things that you want to think through, or if you're even going to have that, or if your grade level could handle that. But also, if you have trained someone, could they handle it? Do you want an adult nearby when kids are using specific tools like the glue gun? Maybe the glue gun is only used by your, adult helper or your paraprofessional when you have her time or his time. All right. Another thing to think through is supplies. How will kids get the supplies? Will they be allowed to use everything or only items for which they've been trained? How many things can they have out at once? How will kids know what they can use on a given day? I've tried using sticky notes to indicate which tools they'll be allowed to use or access during a given session. And I've also considered having like a in use at any time section as well. Like this area, like the glue and the markers and the Play-Doh and the pipe cleaners and things like that. Maybe I would say, or scissors, maybe I would say these are things that you can use at any time. But then when there's a sticky note on the container, this is what we're going to use for this activity or for today. So but that's just a suggestion. What happens when someone is using something that someone else wants? Like, are you going to have a procedure in place for that? Because you could be calling small groups at this time, especially if you're using it in centers. And so you're going to want this to be able to be situated and figured out by the students themselves so that you're not completely interrupted constantly. So what procedure will you have in place to deal with that? Will you have a sign-up sheet? Will you have, what will you do in that case? And how will you deal with cleanup? And the cleanup is the big one for me. Like, this is huge. I've said it before. And because I don't want to deal with a giant mess. And this is where I have to repeat the procedure rule that Fred Jones says. Never do anything for kids that they are thoroughly capable of doing for themselves. That's really important. And remember, having things labeled helps a lot with routines and procedures. It is so massive. And actually in my routines, procedures, Makerspace kit, like I do have some common procedures actually written out for you, and that you could use. And I also have like some signs for like broken tools and things like that, because that's another thing. Do you have a place for broken tools? And what constitutes broken? Can it be recycled? We talk a lot about recycling in our Makerspace because trash can be a tremendous free supply. And I know that sounds gross at first, but like, even if you're talking about plastic cups that have been like washed out and then brought in by students, not washed out by you, because that's just an added thing that you have to do. But I mean, like, they've been washed. The parents are willing to wash them out and send them in, or even water bottles or Coke bottles, like, things that are filling up our landfills. So let's use them to make stuff in our makerspace. Let's recycle them. So that's the first thing. Like that's really important. If it's a broken tool, like, does it go in the tool hospital bin? So I want kids to come to me immediately if they are hurt. So I don't want them to come to me and decide if something, like, what do I do if this breaks? Like, I don't want them to come to me for things like that, because that's not an emergency. If they're hurt, then I definitely want them to come to me. But there could be a place where this is broken, and I can take a look and see how broken it is. The ask three before me method works the best. Like they can ask three others what they think, and then they make the decision, the three of them, with that, the fourth child. And if all of those kids, all of the three, including the child that had the original question, don't know the answer, then all four of them can come to me with the problem. And this is a significant procedure to have in place for pretty much anything. Like ask three before me is one of my favorite procedures. All right. And then teams. This is another thing that you're going to want to have thought through. Teams. Makerspace is all about collaboration. It's not about competition. Kids have enough practice with that. So don't get me wrong. Again, I'm all for healthy competition, but Makerspace is working through things with a team. Now, some kids don't love being a part of a team, and I think that there is a healthy balance needed. Like, I think sometimes we can let kids work alone, but I think sometimes we have to stretch ourselves and we have to learn to like get along with a team. But you know your students, so go with what works with that. But this can be a great way for them to like work through some of those aspects of working with a team, because synergy is magical, and it can be really incredible in a makerspace. So you definitely want to have a procedure in place for teams. I don't like to call team procedures rules. I think rules sound kind of negative, so I honestly like to call them team agreements, which is also in my procedure makerspace thing. I have like written out team agreements because I think that can be really helpful to have these things that we've all agreed upon, and having a set of agreements that all teammates can live with makes that teamwork so much better. And I'm also really about the win-win. Like I know the whole majority rules, is often what people strive for, but I think it's Stephen Covey that said, let's go for the win-win, because a majority rules implies a win-lose. And if that's possible, if that's the only thing that's possible for both parties, then sometimes we have to go with the win-lose mentality. But I think if it's possible to do a win-win, like that's what we need to, that's the optimal outcome. And here's an example of what I mean by win-win versus win-lose. And by the way, this is Stephen Covey. It's 7 Habits model, and I love that guy. Oh, he was so incredible. So here's an example. A boy wants to use the last group of popsicle sticks. So does a girl. A compromise might be to tell the kids that they will draw names to see who gets them, or you may cut the bundle in half. The first scenario leads to a win-lose. Like they're not going to get them. One kid gets them and the other doesn't. Or a lose-lose with half of a popsicle stick or not enough to finish your invention. But with a win-win, you say, we have enough popsicle sticks for one person. We also have enough toothpicks, straws, and Legos. Would one of you like to use those instead? The straws even bend a little. 9 times out of 10, one kid wants the other option. And then you have a win-win. And that's my favorite one to strive for. All right, so another thing to keep in mind is our jobs. Another great addition to procedures and routines are jobs. Jobs allow kids to take responsibility. And kids can even be trained in each position and maybe even apply for the job. Once you have the right kid for the right job, allow them to be the expert for a while. Let them do it for some time. And maybe we want to change them every quarter, or maybe you want to change them every several weeks. It's up to you. But I think the application process makes it a little bit more, there's a lot more buy-in. They kind of have to tell you why they think they would be good at the job. But it does take a little bit more time, but it's definitely a responsibility booster. So it's just a suggestion. And this, but the good news is that once you have them apply again, and they can be trained by the current job holder, and they can train the newbie, and then you don't have to worry about it. It's like much less work for you, which is another win-win. The thing to remember about procedures and routines is that they take a lot of thought and practice. And I promise you the time and effort it takes to get it all sorted out is totally worth it in the end. And if you discover you don't like how something is going, or like you don't think it's working very well, you can always course correct. Correcting what isn't working is part of life. And so why not teach that to them when they are young? I just think it's vital. It's vital for kids to understand that. We have to learn flexibility, and we have to learn, well, this isn't working for us. Let's figure out a way that is working for us. if you would like, again, if you'd like a little bit of help writing some of your procedures, or you need signs for your space, or creative job titles, or roles and responsibilities, then check out my Makerspace procedures, jobs, and design process packet, which I've been talking about. And I'm going to link to all this in the show notes, because this is a way for you. It makes it easier for you. If you want to do it on your own, then you have the information of how to do it as well. So hopefully that helps. And the packet does actually have some editable links so that you can, when you come up with your own ideas and procedures, you can still have the same like template so it looks consistent. I know some people like really care about that and some people don't. So that all depends. Now, if your head is totally spinning, the good news is I also have a Makerspace procedures and job packet in my store on TPT as well. And I'll link to that in the show notes because it can be a lot. The other thing that I'll link to is my Makerspace Moments in Literature, because this kind of lets you dip your toe in Makerspace, and it ties ELA standards to engineering standards. And you can actually grab a free one in the show notes. Now, the one in the show notes is actually more for, I would say, really more for kindergarten, first grade. It does have a touch of second grade standards, but it's just something to look at for you. I mean, you can actually use it and do it, and it's like with a really cute, adorable book. But I think that it just gives you an idea of what my Makerspaces are, how they're structured. They're normally written for first and second grade. So the book is usually a little bit more, not a little, it's much more complex normally, because I want to have some really strong comprehension going on as well and tie it into the engineering standards. So I hope that this series on Makerspace has helped you and that you get your Makerspace up and running. If you miss an episode, go back to episode 30 and start from the beginning. There's so much information. You're going to be amazed. And remember that you can join me live on Mondays for Makerspace Mondays at 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on my Facebook page, Trina Debery Teaching and Learning. And this is going to be running all through the summer. It'll end close to the end of July. I'd love to hear how you plan to implement your Makerspace. So if you're feeling it, rate, review, and leave a comment on the show. If you are on Apple Podcast, go back to the main portion of One Tired Teacher. You got to scroll down to the ratings and reviews, but right beneath the ratings and reviews, like the gray box, it will have a purple link that says write a review. So you're going to click on that. You're going to tap the stars for ratings and then write a review. Be sure to hit send. Thank you so much for taking the time to do that. I'd love to also give you a shout out for that. So thank you. This One Tired Teacher is ready for a short summer snooze, maybe in a nice hammock. Until next time, sweet dreams and sleep tight.